What I thought I could do is just give you a flavor of the things that didn't make it into the proposal, but that are under discussion, so you do get a sense of, when Julie says, at least for the Early Learning Standards Committee, there's passion. That's a mild way of putting it. You can imagine the kind of discussions. The three that we are focused on in that committee, first of all, and they're reflected in what you already saw, develop recommendations for increasing the overall participation of children in programs. And as I mentioned, we share that goal with the Access Committee. Some of the recommendations that didn't make it into this for now, but we've talked about, are things like looking at CCAP, Children in Child Care Assistance Program should be enrolled for at least 1 year of eligibility, which is one of the things a lot of other groups are talking about. Talked a lot about aggressive outreach, actually, to your point, to enlist parent participation to help them be aware of their options. That's still focused on helping them know about their options for outside the home care, but at least that maybe parents need to be engaged. Home visiting, a lot of talk about home visiting, that's an area where things are heading, and to expand that. Develop a streamlined, universal, and simple application, which has been talked about for a long time. And then what finally made it, as I mentioned, into the proposal was this piece, at least about starting with looking at the funding and the grading. The next one is making recommendations for improvements to state early learning standards. One of the things our committee, and it sounds like several committees have tried to bring to the full council, is this, first of all, this idea of expanding to look more heavily at what the BUILD project has been doing, and to include the 4 ovals model a little bit more, to even consider putting a health person on the advisory council. And I know that's been a strong recommendation. I don't know if it's going to fly, but I think each of the committees is very interested in looking more holistically at their charges, at least ours is. And so that was some of what came out of this first. I apologize, I was going to look at these a little more last night. A lot of what made it into the final proposal about just disseminating in a more practical manner, perhaps, the early childhood indicators of progress and promoting those was probably the biggest focus there. Probably the most controversial area is the program standards piece, because that's where we get into all of the same discussions we've been having around quality rating system and making sure the different sectors are feeling like they can see themselves in the standards, and what are those standards and how do you set those standards. So that is, I think, where most of the discussion happened. Lots of bullet points here that I don't need to read you that you'll know. I mean, need to articulate what those standards are, provide easier access for diverse groups of people. There was a lot of discussion about not only FFN but culturally specific communities. And then needing common measures of program quality. And this is where I think that's why I think you saw that, even though we didn't necessarily put it forward from the group, because we weren't sure if it would be duplicative, I think there was a strong enough feeling that somehow the council needed to connect up with the work that was being done by the departments, and some of the things we're going to be learning as Parent Aware wraps up, and that led to this idea of having a connection to that program standards piece. I can't think of anything. No, you do. Yeah, it seems like we talked about an awful lot. I've got 3 months or 3 meetings worth of minutes. I'm not going to bore you with those. It's just that's what we boiled down to, and I'm really pleased, as she said, that I think the biggest frustration for all of us was, are we going to have an opportunity to keep working on this? Because to just come up with a few things that can be done with one-time money feels very unsatisfying. And even though we know a lot of this has been around for a long time, the fact that this is leading into a body that has the ear of the governor is feeling like a good chance to get some of this moving if we can. So I'm just at least glad we'll have another chance to keep moving on it. So.
And I would just like to remind everybody too, it's the strategic plan that the council's moving forward, and these are just activities that we have the opportunity to take advantage of this money that we can get done in that time frame, or the council can, working with the departments. So these are activities that fit within the framework of the strategic plan. So a lot of things you've been bringing up, I think, are a big part of the strategic plan. But these are just some activities to take advantage of this funding to kind of help move some of it along.
I didn't hear what the timeline was, or you probably said it and I just didn't remember. What is the timeline for the funding?
I think the hope is that we would get the proposal in March, and then that it would be turned around by July 1st.
And then how long will it last?
It would last through August. I always get this 2011. I'm pretty sure. Or 12.
I think it's 12.
It's 3 years.
It's
yeah.
3 years.
Yeah.
I know we're 13 because I know some of the activities have different timing.
It's usually 27
Because it somewhat shadows the council's.
Okay.
Anything more in the program standards, maybe?
Well, the professional
Oh,
development
professional
standard. Well, the only thing was that we kept getting bogged down and wish that there was more money, that we had more money, because we kept getting bogged down with, we only got this much, we want to do this much. And so, so you kept getting bogged down in those kind of discussions within the committee itself. One of the things that didn't come up that we wished that would have gotten on the radar was that fully fund the programs that make a difference for providers wherever they're in the field, so that they can access, if they want to go on to school to better their program, that they have access to the funds to allow them to do that. So, and that means to fund programs like Teach, to fully fund it, and that didn't make the radar, so.
And didn't your group have like 3 subgroups? It's
Yeah.
huge, right?
Yeah.
Professional development's got, so I don't know what they were, but some were looking at higher ed.
Some are looking at higher ed, some are looking at basically the FFN, the new provider coming in, and then just the regular core group of practitioners.
Is the intention of the higher ed piece to come out with a rating of higher ed programs, or to give them goals to?
Because I wasn't a part of the higher ed piece, but what we kind of would have liked to have seen would have, part of the stumbling blocks a lot of times for providers wherever they are in the state is that they go on to do, like for example, they'll start at a community college and get either a few credits there, or they'll get their AA there, and then they'll want to move on, and they hit where they get to a 4-year, and their 4-year won't accept all the credits that they've already earned at their community college or their technical college, and so then they feel like they've hit the stumbling block, and so then they've got to retake things that they've already taken because there aren't real good articulation agreements across the field. So that was I know a piece that they were talking about.
It looked, Katie, that's why I asked for full content, what they handed out when each committee reported back to the full council last time. They had more complete sort of recommendations in more detail, and that it sounds like for whatever reason maybe they're waiting. Obviously,
I think they're waiting to hear.
Because
Those are
everything
just
changed.
drafts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it looked from reading that like it was more of a data capture, not necessarily any kind of external report card or
Yeah.
something.